Hey, what's up, y'all? Here we go, episode 9 of the Siren song. And this is coming along well. The first thing we're going to do, like always, is a little bit of rock work. But there is something that I wanted to tell you that I discovered while I was working on this build. Actually, most of it I learned or discovered afterwards. But one thing I wanted to tell you about this technique, which is the technique that I use to create these mountains, if you haven't been following along or just wondered what I was doing, is that I'm using Flux Trance's rock pack. These are the tan rocks that he has in his collection, and what I'm doing is just changing the size of them. So I'm using the large rocks and then varying the sizes. I change the scale of them from anywhere from 2, 3, 4, depending on what size I'm trying to get in the location. So in the background, I'm using much larger sizes. I'm scaling them up. I think some of them may even scale up to like 15 maybe, and then here closer around the water and so forth and around the ride, I'm making them smaller, maybe 3 or 4. But one thing I discovered was, you can see right here especially, the one rock that's deeply buried in the ground is kind of flat and it doesn't have as many crevices and so forth as some of the other rocks, and that's because in Flux's rock pack he has 2 rocks at least that are large and they're high poly. They have a lot of different faces and they're much more detailed. So one of the things I discovered, and I'm going to keep doing now throughout this build, is when you make them really big, for example, if you're making them like say 6, 7, 8, if you use the high poly rocks and make them larger, they still tend to look really good. The other rocks, they still look decent, but they have more sharp edges and they look a little more video gamey. They really remind me of something out of Tomb Raider, like the very first Tomb Raider or something like that. So I discovered that just using those high poly rocks really makes a big difference. So I'm going to keep doing that. One thing I did try to do as well was to use the in-game rocks and see what they look like if you really scaled them up, and unfortunately they don't look that good. They look really great if you use them at their normal size, or if you scale them up, say 3 or 4, because they're not that big. But if you really try to scale them up to this size, it just doesn't work as well because of the way they're made, the moss they have on them and so forth. It just doesn't look right. So that's one thing I discovered. The second thing I discovered is that you can copy and paste scenery. Now I seem to remember for a long time people asking for this in NoLimits and not having it available. So if this is something new, nobody told me, because I didn't know you could copy and paste scenery objects. So this would have all been a lot quicker if I knew that, because I've been individually choosing things, changing their properties, lowering them and so forth. So that's definitely going to speed up the build in terms of the scenery on this. So that's one thing I'm really happy about. But all that being said, so here we go with the rock work around the curve. I really like the way this came out. I still need to do a little bit more detailing on it and so forth, but as you'll see, it kind of ends up racing along the rock edge, or sort of like a cliff almost, and in between some rocks I put some foliage down, and it really looks good. I like the way that came out. I'm thinking about doing something either in SketchUp or in just using the NoLimits pieces or the supports to make something, maybe some kind of a rock face support or something that you would see to hold back the rocks. Not that I think that would be very effective, because these are pretty gigantic. So we'll see. I'll think about that. But I do like the way this came out in terms of just the way it looks as you go through that section. You'll see that a little more as we go along here. So one thing I'm thinking of doing, I haven't decided if I'm going to do it or not, is to create a platform up to that temple, because its location currently is like on a little island, or sort of a peninsula rather, off by itself. And I think it might be interesting to have some sort of wooden structure coming up through here that people could walk on to actually get to that temple. It would make it a little bit more realistic looking. And then of course the coaster itself could cross under or over that, and that might add to the thrill of the ride. So we'll see about that. I'm not 100% certain on that one way or the other. So if you all have any comments, or if you think that's a good idea, we can give it a try and see what it looks like. I think it might add to the ride. We'll see. So, as we continue to go through this rock work, let me go on to another topic, which is, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I generally let you know about any upcoming trips I have or trips I've just been on. I just went on a really big trip to 5 or 6 parks, and now I'm trying to think, well, where am I going to go next? So, I think, I know in July probably, I'm going to take a one-day trip and hit 3 parks that are close by. I'm going to go to Clementon Lake in New Jersey. I'm going to go to ride the Hellcat because I've never been there. I've never been on that ride. I'm going to go to Sesame Place to ride the 2 coasters they have, including that new Oscars Wacky Taxi, just because it looks like fun. And I did ride Wooden Warrior, which is also by Gravity Group, if I'm correct. I think both of them are. I like Wooden Warrior quite a bit, so I want to go ride Oscar's Wacky Taxi since I'll be right there. And then I'll be going through, coming back via Dutch Wonderland because I want to try that new inverted family coaster they have. So that should be fun. So that'll be coming up in July. And then at Labor Day, I am planning on going to Six Flags Great America in Chicago. I have never been there. So I think it'll be a lot of fun, actually. I'm looking over their coaster list, and they don't really seem to have anything I'm really desperate to ride except for maybe Goliath, Raging Bull, and the Wizard, just because I love those old Schwarzkopf speed racers. I've been on at least one that I can remember. I went on the Zambezi Zinger when it was at Worlds of Fun. I always liked that ride a lot, so I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm also thinking about in December going to Six Flags Fiesta Texas, because I have never been to any of the parks in Texas, and I think that would be a good place to go. And stop at SeaWorld too, so we'll see. And I know in October I'm going to Carowinds, so got some parks coming up. And one thing I want to say right here is this is a new pack that I'm using here. This is Paths by Tom, which they've been around a while, and I don't even know if they've been updated. I've had them a long time, and I've never used them before. And if I had known the copying paste technique, this whole section right here would have been much simpler. But we'll use that in the future. So Tom did a good job on this. They look really good. I found them a little bit difficult to work with, but that's my own shortcoming, not his. I think he did a great job on this. So I definitely big thumbs up to Tom. Big thumbs up to Flux for his rock pack as always, and a big thumbs up to N7 for his trees, which I used fairly extensively throughout this build as well. So all of those items, everyone will be thanked in the description as always. And I can't remember if I left a link to Flux and N7's work. If so, I'll go ahead and link to Tom's Paths pack as well, because it's pretty useful, and he's got all sorts of different things for creating your park, and it really does help it make it look a lot more professional looking. Of course, what I do right here to get this little bend looks like total ass, but again, that's on me, that's not on Tom. So he did a really good job with this. And finally, once I finish this up, I guess I'm being too heavily influenced by Planet Coaster, because I decided to get try to do something really realistic, and I wanted to add some sensors to the ride. I've done that in the past using supports by a dude, or using an idea similar to this dude who used to do Ballsack 7, I think his name was. He did quite a few videos on YouTube about how to do various things using supports. He's really good with supports. I decided instead to go ahead and create one in SketchUp. So I just created my own. It looks a little more realistic because it's got little screws on it. It's got a little pipe leading down to where it attaches to the track. I'll start on that in just a minute, and I'll also go ahead, here you can see I'm doing it right here. I'll also go ahead and copy or put a link to this sensor in the description in case anybody wants to download it. It's nothing fancy, it's not great. I can do the bare minimum in SketchUp. I did update it a little bit past what you see here in terms of adding a way for it to actually connect to the track, because when I first did it, it was just kind of floating there. So that's been updated. So I'll go ahead and link that as well. In case anybody wants to use it, go ahead, feel free. Just make sure you credit me, please. I would appreciate it. So let's see if we got anything else to talk about this build. I think that's about it for this go around. I'm pleased with the way this is coming out. It looks pretty good to me. I really do like these sensors. I think it adds a level of realism to the ride that's just not there in the game itself. So I like the way that looks. So I think that's going to be it. Let's see, we got about a minute to go. I think that's about all I have to say about this. Oh yeah, I went ahead and added 3 trains just so we would have 3 train operation, and I guess I will go ahead and do the transfer track. I never really do that just because I mean, to me it's like, okay, you stuck a transfer track there, but I guess since I am going for a little bit more realism here in terms of the mechanics of the ride, I'll go ahead and do it. So maybe I'll do that in the next video. We'll see. I think I've done it once or twice. I'm not even 100% certain I know how to do it, so I might have to go on YouTube, see if I can figure out how to do it. But I'll do that for the next episode. Otherwise, I'm going to leave you with some glamour shots, and that will be it for this video. So leave a comment if you have anything to say, subscribe if you feel like subscribing, and I will talk to you next time. Enjoy the ride.